We have a few more people. Well, I'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Elizabeth Bowe, and I am a member of the Episcopal Parish Network Board. And on behalf of Joe Swimmer, our Executive Director, I'd like to welcome you to today's digital workshop and thank you for joining us. And I will turn it over to Charles to start our conversation.
Good afternoon. This is Charles Clowen. Happy to be with you this afternoon. We have one glitch, and that is Susan Culhane, one of our presenters, has lost power. There was an accident in her neighborhood, so she can't get on the internet. We hope she's on the internet by the time it's her turn. Dave, would you please introduce yourself?
Certainly, and then I see we have a question already from Mr. Benton. My name's Davey Gerhard. I'm the Executive Director for TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, and we're really happy that you can be with us today as we talk about gratitude, timely, as we're already planning our Thanksgiving dinners, I'm certain. So we're ready to talk about gratitude. I think a couple of things about today. This session is being recorded. You've likely noted that there's a little red flashing dot up in your screen. So we'll be able to share this presentation with you when it's done. And also the slides that we share today, we'll be able to get those out to you so you can follow along or share with your friends and neighbors. The more, the merrier. We're so happy that you are joining us today. And Charles, it's always nice to be with you. So
nice to be with you, David.
For inviting me.
Good. My presentation? Yes, go ahead.
Yep, just give me 1 second.
All you participants, Kat and Suzanne Culhane and David Gerhard. Next slide, please. All right. Thanksgiving is not a day, but a way of life. What I have found most effective is at the offering, taking a few minutes to say thank you, thank you, thank you for ministry and the generosity that makes it possible. No one left the church I know of because they felt thanked and appreciated. What I've listed here are some of the ministries to be thanked, and I'll have more in just another minute. First one I love to thank is the Altar Guild. On a Sunday morning at the time of the offering, I say, I want to thank today our Altar Guild, the hidden angels. They prepare all the things for communion, clean up after us, and keep the church looking beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you for them. And thank you, thank you, thank you for your generosity. It makes it possible to have a wonderful church here for our Altar Guild. Second one I like to talk about is choir for the adult. I did this at the Cathedral of our Incarnation. After the choir did a great anthem, I said, I want to thank the choir for their great music. Week by week, they gather on Thursday nights to practice. They come in here early on Sunday morning, and they just sang that beautiful anthem. And I want to thank especially our organist, Ken. He is wonderful. He supports the choir. He leads choir. He's always here. I want to say thank you and thank you to Ken. And I want to thank all of you because your generosity makes it possible for us to have a wonderful, wonderful music program. Next. One back, please. Next, I'm sorry. These are more examples of ministries one can thank. I like to talk to you about outreach. We're good asking people for things in church, but we don't usually thank them. One of the offertories I would give at the time of a food drive, I want to thank our parishioners so much. You're so generous in bringing food in to feed the hungry. You make a real difference. And thank you for your generosity. Simple statements of giving thanks for what our congregation is doing. Next slide. An event to say thank you. Thanksgiving Eve, the gift of a loaf of bread. Bread is very important in Scripture. The feeding of the 5,000, there are 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. Feed 5,000 persons, and that miracle is the only miracle found in all 4 Gospels. Bread is crucial in the life of the church. Every Sunday we come together and we eat bread. So bread is important. What I have found most effective is a Thanksgiving Eve service, where each family can sign up in church or on the internet for a loaf of bread. So people bring, the bread is brought in by the altar guild on Sunday. The bread is blessed at the offertory. At the end of church, the women put on their gloves, rubber gloves, and give a loaf of bread to each person, each family who comes, each household. Now, the key thing is this. One, make sure you order the bread on Monday. Don't walk into the bakery on Wednesday afternoon and say, I would like 50 loaves of bread. Order the best bread from the best place in town and welcome people and say, listen, this bread is for you, a thanksgiving for your ministry here in this church and generosity. Please serve it at lunch tomorrow, at dinner, Thanksgiving dinner, or please take it with you to your nieces or nephews, wherever you may be going for Thanksgiving dinner. It's a wonderful tool for evangelism because it's a way of our thanking people and they taking this Thanksgiving and sharing it with others. And always, oh, by the way, always have a few extra loaves for guests. Next. An event to say thank you. A legacy society, everyone in congregations have a legacy society. But I believe if you can afford a cake, you can afford a legacy society. What we do at the cathedral is we list all the names of people who are members of our legacy society. And we put little asterisks to those who have died. Because in a congregation that's not wealthy, you usually do not get the bequest until both husband and wife die. Also, when you do this, remember, we're talking about the will/estate plans. Many people today have 401ks, life insurance that aren't part of a will. They're part of your estate. In fact, half of my net worth right now is held up in insurance policies with requests. Now, we list all the names. We have 7 anonymous. We may have 30 households. And we have a great cake. We buy the cake in the best bakery in Baltimore, I believe. Buttercream frosting. It's at hospitality hour. Everybody can come, have a nice piece of cake, and Thanksgiving for our Legacy Society members. Again, that encourages others to see the names on it and say, yeah, if they can do it, I can do it. Next slide, please. A Sunday. We do this in the summer. What happens is we announce to the congregation well in advance, we're gonna have a Sunday, S-U-N-D-A-E, Sunday. And following both services, we give ice cream sundaes to everybody who comes. I say, you know, maybe your mother said you can't have ice cream before lunch. I believe you can. And we have a wonderful time. The vestry serves the ice cream with making sundaes with butterscotch sauce and chocolate sauce and strawberries with whipped cream. And people bring their grandchildren. Wow, imagine that, getting a free Sunday at church and increase attendance that day. And also remember, there are some who cannot eat ice cream. They're allergic to milk. So it's no sugar added for those who can't have sugar, and water ice for people who can't have milk products. Again, next, please. This, I believe, is the most important. Personal thank you notes written to say thank you. Writing personal thank you notes is an incredible, effective way to thank people for their efforts in the various ministries of the church and for their generosity. Remember, no one left the church because they felt appreciated. Thank you notes are key. In my experience in ministry, they have found out through research that 80% of large givers appreciate a thank you note. Not asking for more money, just thanking them for their generosity. I have found generosity, gratitude brings more generosity. To give an example of this in my own experience, when we had our stewardship over, I would write a personal thank you note to everybody, thanking them for their pledge. I didn't say how much, just wanted to thank them for their pledge and let them know they were appreciated. Their money will make a difference in bringing forth the mission and vision of our congregation. own personal experience this past 2 months. I unexpectedly was hospitalized on October 7th at a small hospital here in Southern Delaware. And it was traumatic. I wasn't expecting it. And there were 2 nurses there who were wonderful, one day nurse and one night nurse. They had 12-hour shifts, so you only have 2 nurses. They were wonderful to me. I wrote a thank you note to them at the hospital. The hospital was so touched, they are now making that a special occasion. They interviewed me on radio, not radio, but on the phone, and they're going to have a special ceremony where I give 2 certificates, these 2 nurses who cared for me. Second one in this past month, my wife and I are attending a small Episcopal church here in Southern Delaware. And we were there, we went the first Sunday, then the second, third, and I wrote a note to the rector, said, thank you, and thank the congregation for the gracious hospitality. He was so thrilled with that note. He read it in church and said it made the best day, best week, best month of his life. Because my wife and I appreciated the generosity of spirit for that church. So thank you notes are key. You'll hear more of that from David, as well as Suzanne, who hopefully will be able to be a part of our presentation in a while. Thank you very much. Now, Davey, it's your show.
Well, in the spirit of thanks, thank you, Charles. Always amazing, great insights. I loved those two screens of people to remember to thank in church, because I think, it's so important when we show up Sunday after Sunday, we forget that it takes a whole lot of people, a whole lot of talent, a whole lot of resources to bring Sunday together every week. And so when you really look at that long list of folks who have made that Sunday possible, including look at ourselves when we share the peace, right? We're also part of that Sunday and we should be grateful for our participation. So I really love that, Charles. Good reminder that we should be particularly thankful for everyone who makes church happen. It takes a village, doesn't it? Or a church, I might say. I'm about to share my screen and share a few slides. And before I do that, I just want to remind you that you have lots of opportunities to ask questions. You can type them into the chat, or you can use the Q&A. Those are 2 tabs at the bottom of your screen. So as we're talking, if something pops into your mind and you'd like to ask us, put it in there, and then we'll make sure that we get it answered after we stop our little presentations. And then that's the second thing I want to say. We're going to devote most of this time together to talking about you and answering your questions. So have some good ones for us. With that, I'm going to share my screen and move through a couple of ideas about gratitude practices. So generosity and gratitude are close cousins. They work together and they inform each other. Our generosity brings forth our gratitude. Our gratitude inspires our generosity. They are locked in a beautiful relationship together. So we're going to talk a little bit about generosity and gratitude and that relationship. We're going to talk a little bit about how we can sharpen or hone that practice of gratitude. And I call it a practice. Sometimes I call it a discipline because it's something we work at and it's something we have to work at. It doesn't always come to us naturally. We have to learn the task of being grateful, and then we have to keep at it because there are lots of things that distract us. Frustrations, daily life, stress, stuff that might distract us from being our most considerate and grateful selves. So it's a discipline that we have to stick to it. So I'll give us some exercises, some calisthenics that we can put into our repertoire. We're going to talk a little bit then about how gratitude inspires our giving, inspires our members to make their best gifts, and finish out by talking about ways you can remember gratitude and stewardship throughout the church year. generosity is something we grow. It's rooted deep in our theology. It's rooted in our experience. It's rooted in our Christian life. But it's something that we need to cultivate. Like anything that we want to grow, we need to make sure that it gets the right sun and the right water and the right attention. And so it's something that we work at. We should practice it. We should create systems of positive thinking that reinforce that generous, grateful mindset. And we should practice some random acts. And I'm going to go through a couple of those. Whenever we do these things, they psychically reinforce that idea that we are grateful for all that we have received, all that God has given us, the great generosity of creation. And it comes from our reminder that every generous act and every perfect gift comes from God above. That's what the letter to James tells us. So gratitude, it's a daily habit. And I like to wake up and then I like to end my day with the same thing. What am I grateful for? You know, when I'm waking up, it's maybe the sunrise or maybe a good night's sleep or maybe the thing I'm most excited about doing that day. And as I close out my day, I revisit that same question. It's just such a simple one, right? But it's a daily exercise, reminding myself what I'm grateful for. When we do that, it reinforces the fact that there are things to look forward to. Yeah, there may be some things that we're dreading that day too. A trip to the dentist, a really uncomfortable meeting with an employee, or something contentious happening in the world. But there are also things that we're excited about, that we're ready to do. Be ready for that and be grateful for it. And then, when we see someone in the world doing the right thing, remind them, say thank you. Maybe not on something they did to you, but something they did for good. And I like to think of this. Last year, I was in Michigan. I'm in San Francisco, that's where I live. But I was in Michigan in the cold snow visiting my family for the holidays. And I saw someone in a parking lot walk over to a car, and there was a woman who was frail, I would say, and she was having a hard time unloading her cart and putting it into her trunk. These people just kind of walked over and unloaded her basket for her and carried the basket back over to the place that it goes and made sure her trunk closed. And when they walked back, because they were parked near me, I said, "Thank you for doing that. That was such a nice thing to do for this stranger." And they looked at me kind of like I was a little crazy. They got in their car and they went on their way. And I wasn't, it was just, they did something beautiful. So acknowledge, reinforce, when you see people doing the right thing, reinforce that gratitude that you have for the universe, for that generosity that they just exhibited. We can also find other ways to reinforce that habit. I have a good friend who has this Friday practice, the half hour before he closes his laptop and starts his weekend, he blocks off of his calendar and he gets into a frame of mind and he writes out emails to everyone who's done something important for him that week or something that he really appreciates. And it's lovely when I get a Friday gratitude from him. It's like, oh, great, I made the list. Some weeks I don't, but what it means for me receiving it is, oh, somebody was grateful for what I did, and I have that little exchange. And for him, what it means is this moment to kind of intentionally say, well, who are the angels in my life this week? Who made things easier for me? Who did something heroic? What did I notice? So these practices that we get into help us become more generous people. And I think finally, the more difficult one in a practice of gratitude is accepting others' gratitude for us, right? We're so polite. No, it was nothing. Oh, I would do it for anyone. Why do we say those things, right? When somebody says thank you, receive that thanks. It's a beautiful gift that they've just given us by acknowledging that something wonderful happened. So that's a way to just keep that loop. And that's important. Generosity on a loop. A few other things to kind of get in the mindset. One I like to think of is assume goodwill. And, we're used to in daily life, various things that come up, people who might not do the right thing, or people we're maybe a little bit wary of or hesitant toward. And what I like to do is not naively, but perhaps theologically, go into a situation assuming that that person wants the right thing to happen, assuming that the right outcome is going to come out of this, assuming goodwill on both parts. We're both here to make sure the right thing happens. And that's from something is going to be wonderful, like a lovely dinner party where everyone's going to be lovely and happy, to a struggling vestry meeting where you hope everybody can get on the same page about something that's really important in your church. When we do that, when we assume that everyone going into a situation is there for the right reasons, we just come into it from a place of love, from gratitude, from generosity. So think positively. Also forgive yourself. This is a hard one to do, right? We're told that we should forgive others. We don't always do that back at ourselves. We remember these things that we might say, I really made a mistake there, and we continue to beat ourselves up about it or whatever. There's an appropriate time for that, and then there's a time when we need to let it go because it's hindering us. So also accept the goodwill on your own behalf, right? I'm an okay person. I tried to do the right thing here. When I messed up, I made amends. We're past it now. Let's let ourselves get there. Banish those jaded outlooks. That's a part of assuming goodwill too, right? Oh, we've been down here before. Oh, I know how this person's going to act. I'm already expecting the worst, right? These are the things that we condition ourselves to do, maybe from a protective place, right? But sometimes that jaded outlook can really cloud what the experience could turn into. And give second chances, maybe not an infinite number of chances, but give people a chance to redeem themselves when they've messed up, when they've hurt you, when you've hurt them. You hope for a second chance. So give that forgiveness. It's all a part of being a more gracious, generous person. And finally, I want to go through a couple of random acts. And random acts of kindness, remember that bumper sticker from the 80s? It's true. Practice random acts of kindness, because what they really do for us is they give us that little nudge, that reinforcement that the world is generally a good place and that we're good people in it. So let's reinforce that by doing some wonderful things, some small things, some things that are easy, taking care of a neighbor or a loved one when they're sick, or buying a cup of coffee, or paying a bridge toll for the person behind you, or whatever it is, that kind of unexpected little thing, some pocket change maybe, or something that you could do that's really easy, that gives a smile or a sense of good feeling to the other people in your lives. Join something that's good, an effort in your community or an effort at church that other people are working on, building the pageant for the Christmas pageant, or working in the garden, or coaching a team, or something like that, something that needs your help. Join a team, because you're part of it. You will just get that feeling of generosity, of giving back, and people will respect the gift that you're giving them. Support a good cause, something at your church, or maybe a nonprofit in your neighborhood that's doing good work. Sign up for a Saturday, sign your kids and your family up, go do something together. I love it when families do great vacations together or go to a movie or a museum. I also love it when families volunteer together, when they roll up their sleeves and go to pick trash out of a river, or take care of birds in a nature preserve, or whatever they want to do. Those are also great ways to spend family time and to support a cause that matters to you, and to get in that mindset of being a generous person that gives back to the world, that receives the goodness of the world. And then keep spreading it. Just keep going. Keep that loop of gratitude and love going, by giving credit to other people, by reminding yourself that you're a part of something bigger. Impact and gratitude are related. And I say this because when we remind our members that the gifts they did, this is back to Charles' long list of people that he wants to thank at the beginning of a service. When we remind people that everything that they give, everything that they do impacts our ministry and our ability to serve God and our neighbors, this is impact for our giving, right? It's not just the budget is met and we do some nice things. This is, I'm making a difference. When we can remind people and thank them for it, we draw a big thick line under that feeling of them being appreciated, that we are grateful for what they've done. And it helps them feel a connection to the gifts they've made out in the community. We write that check, or maybe we don't even write a check anymore. It just comes out of our bank account on some periodic time, and we forget about the fact that we're supporting something. So being reminded that our gifts have impact is really important. Your stewardship should motivate your members to think generously, because you're thanking them all the time and they're seeing the impact of that. And the way we share that impact is through storytelling. It is so important to bring those stories of what your ministries do back into the congregation. We are so terrible as Episcopalians about spreading our own good news. When we do great things in the community, we're sometimes the last people to know about it or talk about it, and we should talk about it more. And let's use some metrics, right? Our nonprofit siblings have taught us that it's great to talk about the work you do, and it's even better to talk about how impactful that work is. That's to say, we feed people every week. How many people do you feed them? We feed 100 families a week. Now that sounds like impact to me. That's exciting. So remind your members that what they're doing has real impact, and invite stories from those ministries back into the congregation at appropriate times, at announcement time. Maybe there's a sermon moment that you could have. Maybe there's a after church discussion or a rector's forum, and you want to bring people in to share those stories. When we share the storytelling of our generosity in the community, we help everybody understand that their gifts really make a difference in the world. So consider doing testimonials, not just at stewardship time, when many of our churches do the minute for mission, and we talk about why we're members and why we give and why it matters. Yes, do it then, but also do it throughout the year. Remind people all the time that what they give to church, what they give to the community, is changing lives. Finally, I want to go over a few things that as Episcopalians, we understand really well, and that's our church year, our liturgical calendar. And it just keeps us on the wheel of generosity. It keeps us on the wheel of being present with the seasons, with our senses, and with the ways that each of the seasons of the church year give us a different lens into being creative, generous, thinking about what's to come. So I give these to you, and you'll have the slides so you can take a deeper look into them. Every season of the church year, pick a theme about why we're grateful, what that season brings to mind. If it's talking about the light returning or the incarnation, or reminding us ourselves in Lent, as Charles says on that refreshment Sunday, reminding ourselves that we give beautiful gifts to the church that go on way past our lifetimes. Find these times throughout the church year to bring that conversation of gratitude and generosity back into it liturgically, theologically. The more we underscore that, the more sense it makes to us, because the liturgical calendar really speaks to our primitive souls, doesn't it? Because it's about sunlight and earth and warmth and all of it, right? It just goes right back to the deepest parts of our person. And when we can tie those feelings to our gratitude and our generosity, we do great things. So I give you these for your planning as you move through the year. either personally reflecting on the church year, or if you're in charge of running programs or developing adult education for your church, think about these different feasts and seasons as ways to really call out our generosity and our gratitude. You'll find that then you have a church that's ready to be grateful, thinking generously, and when it comes time to ask them to share their wealth and their works and their wisdom, they'll be ready to go, because you've been talking about this all year round with them. Those are a couple of thoughts that I have, and I want to end with this beautiful quote from Archbishop Tutu. Like humility, generosity comes from seeing that everything we have and everything we accomplish comes from God's grace and God's love for us. Certainly, it is from experiencing this generosity of God and the generosity of those in our life that we learn gratitude and to be generous to others. Remember, it all comes from God, all of it. Our thanks for the creation is the root of what brings us into relationship with each other. That does it for what I hope to share, and I hope that you'll find other tools for generosity on the TENS website, tens.org. They are free for you. You can visit at any time and take what you like. It's all yours to use in the context of your ministry. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pull our panelists back into the room. I see we already have some chat questions that are coming up. So let's see, where are we at here? Oh, we're just naming who we are. Okay, thank you. Good to see folks. Are there questions that you have for Charles or me? We're here to answer questions on how you can inculcate generosity and gratitude in your congregations.
While we're waiting for a response, let me just share one of the stories I do when I preach on generosity. I ask people, I say, anybody in this congregation not want to be happy? Only once did a hand go up, and that was a person who's mentally disabled. We all want to be happy. So you get in the morning and say, I'm going to be happy today. Well, you go downstairs, there's no cream for your coffee. You get to use traffic jam when you've got to be somewhere you have to be. Our happiness disappears. But I asked the question about being thankful. See, I believe people who are thankful become happy. That's the side effect. I know many wealthy people that are miserable. They're jealous of their brother or sister. They're upset about the stock market, all kinds of things. Their Jaguar doesn't work anymore. They have to trade it in. And I've met poor people. I went to the dump a few weeks ago, and I had brought all this stuff. And the guy who checked me in Baltimore County, you have to have a resident, he said, have a blessed day.
Yeah.
Imagine that, getting a blessing from the guy at the dump. I'm thankful for this.
Comes from everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that's the key thing, is being thankful and appreciative, which is gratitude, which then leads to generosity.
Yeah. Charles, on that topic, Veronica has just asked a great question. I think it's a really essential one, especially as we're going into this tough, I think it's going to be a tough budget year for the church. How to combine messages of generosity when you also need to communicate that the church is running a deficit. And I like to think about, this happens, right? This is part of our process in church. It's not always good news. We're not always growing. Sometimes we're in a period where we're reflecting the environment around us. And I have a couple of ways that I like to address that, Veronica, and maybe others on this call have other things to say about it. But one of the first is to focus the conversation on what we are able to do. So that appreciative inquiry thing, that part of being appreciative and gracious. Here are the things we are going to be able to do this year, ministries that we can continue, things that we will be doing, and also remind people that even in a tight year, the church needs our gifts. Maybe we don't have as much treasure to share, but we certainly need to share our time and our talent in order to accomplish some of the same great things that our church might do. So it's a time when sometimes we need to roll up our sleeves even one more roll higher and help contribute to the work of the church when our gifts, our financial gifts, maybe are lagging a little because of the economy, because of uncertainty and all those things. And I think the other thing to remember is that church doesn't stop working just because the budget is in deficit or that we're in tough times, right? Our neighbors still need us. The church is still open. People are still being fed and nourished by the word that we're preaching and the work that we're doing. So again, it's to say, don't give up on us. We're going to get through this. We're making it together, and we'll encounter this together. But I think the messaging changes when there's a deficit, right? Because we need to be responsible stewards, and we need to talk about the fact that we're in a tough time. If you have reserves and you're using them to fund that deficit, remember to tell people this is temporary. We're not going to do this every year. We're doing it now. Thank goodness we have some reserves, and next year we'll be able to build them back up again, right? But right now we have this moment that we're in, and look around us and listen to the news and we can understand. But also look around and listen to the good news, because that keeps going too. Jesus keeps telling us how to get through this. And the early church tells us what to do when times are uncertain, as they certainly were in the book of Acts. So those are a couple of ideas I have. Charles, what do you say to a church?
Well, I think, I always preach on stewardship like the Sunday before we have the gathering. Hidden gatherings are very important. And I preach my sermon on stewardship, about giving, generosity. Then on that Sunday, we have the offering. People bring their pledges. We have them send them in or bring them that Sunday. People, as they go up for communion, place those pledges in the offering plate. And after we have communion, we sing the praise God from all blessings flow with hallelujahs. Because unless your church is going to close if it's a bad year, okay, vestries, I have experienced, do their very best to keep the church going. They've got to make some tough cuts. They do their very best. But we celebrate that because these are the people giving the money to enable our ministries to go on. So it should be a celebration that Sunday. Thank you for all those who are giving. And that's so important, because you don't want to make it downer. Deficit. You appreciate those who are giving, and hopefully some of those people will give more, or some people haven't given. But it happens, and churches fluctuate that way.
That's a really good point, Charles. Not every household experiences the economy in the same way. It depends on where your money comes from and where your stability comes from, how you're making your giving possible. And also, church, the rector, the vestry, they always have someone in mind that they're saving perhaps for that big ask one day when they need to replace the roof, or when the furnace goes out and they're going to tap someone for a big capital gift. But sometimes we need to unlock those gifts in a deficit year too, to say, I know this isn't as exciting as, redoing the parish hall like we talked about, but we need some of that generosity that you're planning on sharing in 2 years when we do the capital campaign. Is there anything you can share now? Because there are some people that have extraordinary means, and we might be saving that gift for another time, but when we look around, the time is now. The time is now that the church needs that gift. So if you have some of those donors in your membership, really consider it. Maybe this is the year.
And remember, the key I find, and I raised millions in working for the Diocese of Maryland, it's 6 words of thank you, thank you, thank you. And then it's personal relationships. That's the power of the thank you note, the power of the phone call, the lunches you have with donors, ways of building relationships. So one can turn to them not as a stranger. I've never talked to you in 3 years. Let me tell you what I need from you. But be in contact and develop relationships, especially with your largest givers. So there's a personal relationship there.
Yeah, we do tend to have some relationships with our largest givers because they can do the most impact with their giving. But we need to be, of course, grateful and thankful for absolutely every gift matters. And there's a question about that from Connie in the chat, Charles. She asks you about something you said in thank you notes. I did not hear you to say only write to the large givers.
Oh,
But
no,
give right to everyone.
right to everyone.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you want to encourage people, thank people. No gift's too large, but every gift is also appreciated.
all gift matters.
All gift matters, and that's how you grow the gift.
Mhm.
Not just to your large givers, but to all givers. People who do
Right.
special things for the church. People who show up and head up a food drive or head up a car wash. People who are, take leadership and make a difference and help change the world.
And they also do things besides make their financial gifts. And I want to call that out too. I'm just looking at all the pledge forms that are coming in from my church right now and recording them down. That's my ministry in my own church here in San Francisco. And, I had a pledge form from someone who said, I can only make a very small gift this year. It's much smaller than last year's. But here are the ways that I can give my time. And she had a whole bunch of things that she wanted to do for the church. Among them, writing thank you notes, birthday cards. She said, I will handwrite everybody's birthday card this year. That was going to be her gift, is going to be her gift. And that's important too, right? So people make all kinds of gifts to make church happen. And that's worthy of a thank you note too, when we remember all the ways that people share their time and their talent.
If you had to pay all the volunteers that make the Sunday service happen, your church would need $1 million budget. Pay everybody in the choir, all the ushers,
Yep.
altar guild, hospitality people.
Yeah. What are some other questions that you all might have? I know we have about 15 minutes left. We're here, happy to talk about gratitude and generosity. It looks like Suzanne's not going to be able to join us. We just got a message that her internet service is down for the count. I don't know what's happening on Long Island, but it's not good.
But her slides will be included in what you receive tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Is there anything else from anyone? As we move into this time of church when many of our stewardship campaigns are wrapping up, you may have already had your in-gathering or be doing it real soon. These are the moments to really talk about our generosity and our gratitude as we approach the greatest gift of Christmas and the incarnation, and remember what we're all coming to do here.
Word about Suzanne, she's going to have her slides and she'll be happy to make contact with anybody who'd like to question. So you'll see that in this report of
Right.
this thing. And you'll be able to call her for any questions about her slides.
Wonderful.
And this is a time, it's, what I can't quite believe is I went to Giant down here in Southern Delaware and they have all the Christmas wreaths on the front porch and all the Christmas trees. So Thanksgiving used to be a special day and then you moved on to Christmas. Now it's already here. But I think to give this sense of Thanksgiving for your church, appreciation to people who have given, appreciation for those who do the video, when most churches now have Zoom call on Sunday morning. I remember it used to be the case where when you miss church Sunday morning, you miss church. Now you can miss church because the grandchildren come for a visit and sit down with a cold iced tea and watch it on Wednesday night. So the whole church thing has changed. And Joe Swimmer said earlier in this time, he said, we've had 10 years of change in 6 months. We've had 10 years of change in the past 2 years, where we're dealing now with a whole bunch of different issues. To give an example, many churches have accepted electronic fund transfer. At our diocese, our cathedral, we have these little cards about this big, about the size of your hand, for electronic fund transfer, and they're wrapped in plastic, so recycle them. And the dean will say, for all of you who give electronic fund transfer, we thank you. You can count on your money every week and month. Please, when the offering plate is passed, put one of those in. Well, I said about 1/3 back, majority of people in front of me all put these green cards in. It's electronic fund transfer, it's maybe stocks, all the things electronically. And do not put any cash in the offering plate. I still do. I write a check every week. I'm old fashioned, I'm 80. But to give people that sense of participation, if they didn't have these little green cards, you would think, boy, half the people at the cathedral don't give anything. That's not true. So, but to thank people for that and to make it clear that giving has changed dramatically. Back in the old days, used to count on a lot of money coming in December. People made up their pledge. You get a lot less of that now because people's pledges are constant. Electronic fund transfer, I mean, if you go on vacation for 3 weeks through Bali, the money is still going to come into the church.
Yeah.
If you go away for a month to visit your grandson, it's still going to come to the church.
Yeah.
And it's a great way of people giving and appreciating that, and to
Yeah.
thank people for that.
It's lovely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, for your questions, for your comments, also for your gratitude. That's nice to hear as well. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. All have joined. For Elizabeth, who helped with the slides, and all of you who did comments, we appreciate it. And anything we can do to be of help in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. The Episcopal Network for Stewardship. The Episcopal Network for Stewardship. Davey does a great job. There's wonderful webinars. You can go there and kick off things. And the great thing is you can do a webinar, get a stewardship committee together at home or in a church, small room, play the webinar for everybody. It's a great way to be educated. Also, you can go to your stewardship committee and say, watch this webinar during this week at your leisure for an hour and a half. And you have that. And Davey has done some great work with the webinars.
Right.
A number of us are on those.
Yes.
Also, the Episcopal Network, Parish Network has wonderful, they call them digital workshops. There too, of both plan giving and stewardship. So these are resources for your vestry and your stewardship committee that did not exist 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So if we didn't have Zoom 2 years ago, you wouldn't be able to do this 2 years ago. These are resources that you have. Thank you for joining us today. And let me end with a prayer. God, we thank you for this time together. I give thanks for Davey, his wonderful presentation, and grieve that Dan could not be with us because he has no power in her neighborhood in New York City or Long Island. Lord, watch over her as she presents her slides and the presentation for tomorrow. And Lord, I give thanks for the questions. I give thanks for your attention. Please be thankful, be generous, smile. Give thanks for all of God's blessings. Amen.